Thank you so much for joining us this evening. My name is Jack Stedman. I am one of the co-chairs of the Charter Review Commission. It's our pleasure to be here with you today. So first and foremost, just want to say thank you to NNI for hosting us. I also want to say thank you to the city staff for being here tonight, for helping to stream this and to make this available online. And thank you, of course, to everybody on this commission for being here, being willing to speak, being willing to share about the work that we're doing. And thank you to all of you. We genuinely desire to hear all of the things that you have to say. We look forward to every comment that you have to share with us as we make decisions. We ultimately are here to do what's best for Kansas City through our review of the charter. And so tonight we hope that our discussion can center on the efforts that we're putting in to craft a better city over the next 10 years that this charter is going to be in place. So as we get started, I wanted to share a brief agenda, and then I'm going to let my other commissioners introduce themselves, and then we'll get an introduction from our District 2 Commissioner. So tonight we're going to start by sharing just an introduction, an overview of the Charter Review Commission. So why does this exist? What are we looking at? What are we hoping to accomplish through our review of the Kansas City Charter? Secondly, we're going to go kind of item by item into the summary of issues that we've considered and some of the revisions or the proposals that we have currently in place. I'll say it again later in the meeting, but none of the issues or proposals or recommendations that we have in place today are set in stone, right? We are leaning toward different solutions, and that's why we've come here today, is really to hear public comment on that and to incorporate that into our decision-making process. So we'll hope to spend the bulk of this meeting on public comment. We already have a healthy chunk of speaker cards here and look forward to having all of you share, and then we'll summarize with some closing comments from the commissioners. So with that, let's go ahead and pass it down to Eric, and then we can work this way in introductions.
Eric Rose, 1st District.
Jenny Johnson, 2nd District.
Wilson Vance, 4th District.
Adam Miller, at large.
I'm Jack Stedman, I'm at large.
Margaret Jones, at large.
Michael McGee, 6th District.
Linda Brown, 5th District.
Karen Slaughter, 3rd District.
All right. Thank you all again so much for coming. I am going to first get into the explanation of the charter before we get into the meats and potatoes of everything. So the city charter is the city's constitution, the first of which was ratified in 1853. Section 1212 of the city charter states that the mayor shall appoint a commission no less than once every 10 years for the purpose of reviewing the terms and operations of the city charter. The commission may make recommendations to the mayor and city council for amendments to the charter, or may recommend no changes. If the mayor and city council approve recommended amendments to the charter, a vote of the public will be held to ratify or reject proposed amendments. The charter sets forth rules related to nominations and elections of the mayor and city council, initiative, recall, and referendum petitions, appointment and removal of officers, in other words, the city clerk or the city manager, by the council, establishment of departments, offices, boards, and commissions, and introduction and ratification of ordinances and resolutions. So again, we'll kind of get into a little bit more of some of those major sections and provisions that we're going into, but that's just kind of an overview right there. As a North Star for the work of this commission, we strive toward the goal of municipal government that works for all Kansas Cityans. To that end, we have adopted the following guiding principles for our work: strengthening and safeguarding democratic processes, increasing government accountability, and reducing unnecessary bureaucracy. The commission is devoting to reviewing the city charter in its entirety. The commission is also committed to resisting the urge to make the charter overly specific or narrow in scope to make proposals related to policy. As an independent commission, we have been charged to do no harm in our review and recommendations, and to protect the foundational document in a way that promotes greatest flourishing for Kansas Cityans in decades to come. So a little bit of our work to date. You can go to the website, kcmo.gov/charter. It's been set up by the city communications staff. The website will provide all the information on our commission, and it'll contain a link to the actual city's charter. Additionally, the website also has our meeting agendas and briefing items provided to the commission on revisions recommended by the mayor's office. We held 3 previous meetings in April to start our work of reviewing the recommended revisions to the charter, and we are working with the city's law department to develop red line changes. At our April 11th meeting, we did our introduction and swearing in of the commissioners. We did an establishment of our North Star goal and guiding principles. We had a briefing from the city attorney, and we listened to a proposal of targeted areas for review by the mayor's office and discussion of future schedule. On April 18th, we reviewed Article 6 of the city charter, which is election calendar and the voting system. And we heard from public testimony from Clay, Cass, Platt, and Kansas City election boards, along with Better Ballot, to talk about ranked choice voting. At our last meeting on April 22nd, we continued the discussion of Article 6, the creation of preliminary proposals for review and public listening sessions, and we did an introductory discussion of Article 7, which talks about initiative, referendum, and recall petitions. And then we have a next meeting tomorrow, May 2nd, and the agenda will be a continued discussion of Article 7. We'll review the feedback from our public listening session tonight, creation of preliminary Article 7 proposals for review in the May 8th public listening sessions, and introductory discussion of Article 10, which will deal with the Parks and Recreation Board. So this time I'm going to hand it back to Jack. And,
Perfect. Got a second mic now too. We got fancy. So thank you for that summary. That's fantastic. So what we're going to do next is talk about 4 specific areas that we have reviewed to date. So of these 4, there are 3 that we have asked the city attorney to provide some red line proposals for how we might think about modifying the charter as it currently is. As I understand it, underneath the photo there in the back, there are copies of the red lines that we've made for each of these sections. So if you would like to review those, I'd encourage you to either right now or on the way out to go ahead and grab one of those and take a moment to review those. But specifically, we're going to be looking at 4 different areas. So one area that we'll begin with really talks about centralized filing as it relates to candidates for city council or mayoral candidates. It also deals with the way that the ballot order is currently structured. So once those candidates filed, how are their names appearing on the ballot based off of their filing date. The second thing that we're going to look at is when we vote. So we wanted to review and take a look at the current election calendar and some potential changes that could be made there to promote increased voter turnout in years to come. Thirdly, we want to look at how we vote. So are there opportunities for us to change the way that we vote? I know that we've heard plenty of public testimony around some different proposals that could go into the charter there, so we'll spend some time with that. And then finally, we will spend time talking about our discussion of recall, initiative, and referendum petitions and opportunities to rejig the thresholds needed to file one of those petitions. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Mark.
Okay, great. I also want to reiterate that we're going to run through what we're proposing. Each one of us is going to basically speak on each topic, and then at the end, we'll go through questions, just so we keep time of the essence for all of you. Okay, the first change that we'd like to make to the charter is to create a centralized filing system and random ballot order process. The current problem is that candidates for council and mayor can file a nominating petition with the Kansas City clerk or the election authorities in Cass, Clay, and Platte County. Candidates are also ordered or listed on the ballot based on the time that their nominating petition was received or time-stamped. This has resulted in candidates camping out outside of the election board or city clerk's offices the night before petitions can be turned in. Let's see. Sorry, I lost my place. Can be received, and it's created unnecessary administrative burden to the election authorities as they try to remain consistent on how they all receive and process nomination petitions. The pros to having a centralized location area are reduces administrative burden to the election authorities, promotes fairness and equality to candidates, and how their nominating petitions are processed, and how candidates are listed on the ballot. The cons to making this change, we really couldn't find any. We did, though, discuss an alternative, which was an option of listing the candidates in order of based on the number of signatures that they received on their nominating petitions. Concerns about this approach, as the charter currently provides for a ceiling on the number of signatures, and removing that ceiling would lead to larger administrative burden to the city clerk and election authorities, delayed filing by candidates as they seek to maximize those signatures, and unnecessary campaign financing. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you. Great. So next we'll turn it over to Wilson. One quick comment that I wanted to add to that I neglected to share is the way that we're thinking about this right now is we would call it a proposal in lieu of the status quo. Or said differently, if we are to promote a change or to propose a change to the city council, which way are we currently leaning? And so just wanted to be clear, as I said at the onset of the meeting, we haven't finalized these, we have not taken formal votes, but this is more the way that we're leaning if we are to propose a change. So just wanted to share that as kind of a framing for all of the things you're going to hear. So go
Thanks,
ahead.
Jack. Hi, y'all. Wilson here again. So I'm about to talk about the consideration of changing the election dates. So right now, our municipal elections are April for the primary and June for the general. And what we are considering changing it to is August for the primary and November for the general in odd years. So that means that the next election after this one would be August and November in 2027. And so notably, this would actually extend the next city council's term by about 5 months. So some of the pros that we have considered, or why we're actually considering this, is to increase turnout. So Kansas City has chronically low voter turnout in our municipal elections. This is on trend with other cities in the United States, but we suffer from it here too. Since the last charter review, we have not seen a voter turnout of more than 23% just for our city elections. And even in April, we saw only 14% voter turnout for the primary. So that's kind of why we're considering this in the first place. Some pros that we've associated with this proposal are that November, some people just, associate November with voting, right? They're used to voting in November. It's a fall activity. This is a time when people are thinking about their civic engagement anyway. There's also logistical and implementation pros. According to the election authorities, this would not be an issue for them. There's already an election, like August and November are already election dates on the state calendar, so they wouldn't have to add any new election dates. It would also allow the election authorities longer timelines certifying results to comply with a state statute. So it would give them a little bit more of a cushion when it comes to kind of certifying the primary results. Some cons that we have seen associated with this proposal is that there could be a minor increase in cost to the city because less municipalities around the Kansas City area are also having elections during that time. There could also, of course, be some complexity and complication related to term extension. It's always potential to be messy when we're extending any term by 5 months or however many months. And then also there could be some complications related to the budget process in Kansas City. So if we were to make these changes and if you all were to approve them on a ballot, that would mean that city council people are inaugurated on January 1. We also know that the proposed city budget is made public in the beginning of February. So every 4 years, we would be looking at a new council, folks that may not kind of know the ins and outs of the budget process or how to navigate City Hall, navigating that process for the first time right as they come into office. So that could be challenging. And you may have heard about another alternative that we as a commission were considering that we have set aside right now, and that is the proposal to change the election dates from April and June to August and November of even years. So this would have made the next election after this one 2028 in November, which is the same as presidential, state, federal, judge, etc. Right? So that's a really long ballot. And part of the reason why we chose to move away from this is because the election authorities were very serious about how they thought the implementation would be super difficult. We're looking at a longer waiting time, we're looking at longer voting time, we're looking at a ballot that has nonpartisan city council elections as well as partisan primary elections for the state, federal, presidential, etc. And then, of course, there could also be a less educated electorate because there is so many distracting races, like the presidential and so on, so that folks might not be able to do as much research as they would on an odd year on city council. That's what I got.
There we go. Michael McGee here to talk about how we vote for mayor, council, and municipal judges. So the change we're considering is a move to a 50+1 winner in the primary. In other words, if a candidate were to get 50% or more of the vote in the primary, they would be declared the winner with no general election. So the issue that we're trying to address is the fact that we do have voter turnout concerns, as Wilson described previously. And further, in the last 3 primary elections, 100% of candidates, a total of 25, who received a simple majority of votes in the primary went on to win the general election. So basically having another election after a candidate has already won, 50% plus leads to unnecessary administrative and financial burden in elections for the city, election authorities, and candidates. So the pros of a 50+1 system, it's simple to understand, very easy. You win 50% plus, your election's over. Reduction in unnecessary campaigning for candidates who achieve 50% or more in their primary. Potential for increased voter turnout in primary elections, since the stakes are inevitably higher. Shorter ballots and increased efficiency in general elections. And a potential for decreased costs in general elections, as described to us by the election officials who came and gave testimony at prior meetings. Some of the cons are it doesn't entirely eliminate the need for both a primary and general election, and it may reduce turnout for a general election if a more highly publicized race, like a mayor's race, is called in the primary. So we've considered some alternatives. We've received significant testimony about ranked choice voting and also heard about approval voting. Approval voting is now in place in St. Louis, and ranked choice voting has been adopted in a number of cities throughout the United States. We certainly have an appreciation for the stated benefits of ranked choice voting, or RCV, including less divisive or more collaborative campaigns, kind of brings candidates towards the middle, less divisive rhetoric. The elimination of the need for 2 separate elections. It would just be, one primary in a ranked choice voting system. Potential for reduced costs as general elections are eliminated. Better information as to what the electorate wants, and greater opportunity for candidates with less funding to be elected. However, at this time, we are currently leading towards a 50+1 system due to concerns about permissibility and implementation in accordance with state election law for RCV, lack of precedent with other municipalities in Missouri. No other municipality in Missouri has adopted RCV at this point. Concerns that RCV may reduce voter turnout amongst certain populations. Public perception around election integrity related to RCV. Increased software and equipment costs for election authorities, as they described to us in prior meetings, and just a general concern related to confusion around the RCV system as you implement it over time.
Good evening, everyone. Adam Miller. I'm here to discuss the proposed revisions to recall, initiative petition, and referendum petition signature thresholds. I'll be very brief if I can. The overall and prevailing problem or theme for this is consistently low turnout results, voter turnout results, and very low thresholds, which are highly variable from election to election. To give you an understanding of that, in 2011, there were 71,433 votes cast. In 2015, 34,167, and in 2019, 66,963. So it's all over the place, quite frankly. And this variability is exacerbated by the fact that the current system calculates thresholds based on the votes in the last mayoral election. So lower thresholds can lead to unnecessary conflict and an abuse of a system that's meant to center on the voices of the people and allow them to have a voice in our democracy and our municipality. Kansas City's use of the mayoral election is an outlier among other Missouri cities. So we are an outlier in a lot of different ways, but perhaps in this way, we maybe don't want to be an outlier. At this time, no consensus has been reached, and so again, to Jack's point that we want to make sure we're very clear about is this is a place for discussion, for us to really share your understanding and be able to take that into consideration for our recommendations to the council at a later time. Considering the following options are increasing the thresholds for initiative, referendum, and recall petition signatures as a percentage of votes in the most recent mayoral election, changing thresholds for signatures to be determined as a percentage of registered voters, or third, maintaining status quo for initiative and referendum petitions while modifying recall petition thresholds using either strategy described earlier. One thing we also want to have you to consider with this is that each of these can be considered and evaluated independent from one another. So it doesn't necessarily need to be a package deal. If there's an approach that we as a group feel is better for referendum versus recall, then we can view those independently. And so it doesn't need to be a one system that fits all. We just want to make that very clear in this approach and that we are considering all the options on the table with that.
Perfect. So that is the high-level summary of the things that we've discussed. We would encourage you as well. We have our meetings publicly available, so tomorrow evening at 5 p.m. will be our next regular business meeting amongst the commission. Also a week from tomorrow, also at 5 p.m., if you'd like to join in, there will be Zoom links available. You can also come and join live in person in City Hall. So we would encourage you, we want to continue to hear your voice beyond just this meeting and would love any input that you have. So with that, we're now going to hear public comment. So this is the part that we've all been waiting for here. So we'd love for you to share any comments you have on proposed revisions or any other aspects of the charter that you as members of the public wish to speak to. So just administratively, a couple things to note here. Each member of the public who wishes to speak should fill out a speaker card and turn them in at the front here. I know we have a few more that I think are being delivered. So I've received those. I'm going to call names from those. Please forgive me if I butcher anybody's name, either from handwriting or from my own failures in pronunciation. I will do my best, I promise. And then once we've gotten through the in-person comments, we're also going to open up comments on Zoom. So I believe that Howard's going to be helping us out there. And so if you are on Zoom joining us, what you can do is to raise your hand, and then Howard will help to order those hands and promote you to be able to speak. So as a commission, we ask that all of you please speak at the microphone that's been provided right over here. So that those in the room and viewing online are able to hear your comments. Each person will have exactly 2 minutes to speak, and a timer will go off when the time has expired, as you can see once again over here. So we want to thank you all for being respectful of our time, but also of one another's time, so that we can get through as many comments as possible tonight. And then finally, if any commissioners have any follow-up questions related to any comments, we will provide a moment using this microphone here to be able to ask follow-up questions to those who are providing public testimony. So I think with that, I'll go ahead and start us off here. Oh, yes, thank you. So I'm actually going to call 2 or 3 names at a time so that we can have those 2 or 3 line up, and then I'll call the next person to come and be in the back of the line. Thanks for keeping me honest here. So first, if we can get Larry Bradley, Beth Jones, and Jerry Nolte in that order, please.
Actually, I'd hoped to go later. Okay.
Luck of the draw.
Yes.
You've been with us this whole time, so we're
Yes, I
good
have.
at this point. So,
Obviously, I'm here with Better Ballot KC. We are advocates for going to ranked choice voting. You did a good job of going through the summaries. Let's say this about St. Louis. St. Louis is using approval voting because their voting machines will not do ranked choice voting. And we're seeing comments about the fact that, oh, it's hard to do. Every place that's tried this, when it's been proposed, has said, oh, it's hard, it's hard. And then when they get done, they say, well, it's really easy. All the exit polling says that it's easy. Okay, so ranked choice voting guarantees you that you will have a majority winner every time. This will not. It will save you money. If we did the election, for example, in April, like we're doing now, you'd have one election, you would eliminate the runoff election in June, which would save you over $600,000. And what's more, you'd have your decision by the middle of April so you could seat the new council and the mayor in the 1st of May. And I'll remind you that your fiscal year in Kansas City begins on May 1st. So you've got the new council sitting in place, ready to go at about that time. I do presentations on the unranked choice vote. I see I got a little time here, so I'm going to go into this. I did a presentation one time, and when I got done, the professor that brought me in said, you know, in a jury trial, there are two forms of justice. One is the verdict, and then one is the method by which the verdict is obtained. And if the method by which the verdict is obtained is unjust, then the verdict is unjust. And what this man is showing you is that the way we run our elections is unjust. And the reason it's unjust is because of the ballot we used. And this is an opportunity for us to make this change. I know that our friends at Election Authority don't like it. I hate to say it, but I think it's because they don't want to have to learn to do anything new. So, thank you very much. I appreciate you giving me your time today.
Thank you, Larry. Okay, so Beth, and then if we could get Edward Ford on deck.
Thanks for having me. My name is Beth Jones. I got involved with Better Ballot KC a couple years ago. It's my first time doing anything having to do with the democratic process other than voting. So this is my first chance of actually getting my hands dirty, so to say. The things that our group has done is stuff with trying to communicate clearly to the mayor, the city council, the law department, and the election clerks. We've been having meetings with them and giving them information for several years now on how all of this works, how the other cities across the US are doing this, how it can change things so that you always have a true 50% plus one majority every single time. And there would be no runoff. We followed all the procedures that have been told to us. And we've been working in good faith with everyone. Granted, it hasn't been easy. Between the COVID lockdown, with people not being able to catch people outside because they aren't going anywhere, the mix of Kcmo people versus not Kcmo people at places, the public burnout in politics, just lots of stuff. Unfortunately, the real issue, the law department gave us the wrong number of how many petition signatures we needed in order to get on the ballot. So with having that, we got more than what they asked for. And this was several thousand. But then they came back and said several tens of thousands is what we needed after we turned them in. And we had two different people talking to the law department. So we wasted months of time and energy because of this. So then we go more to the city council, but we have not had our public speaking taken into account for this. So I just want everybody to take into account with public opinion. We've given our public opinion and it has not been heard. Thank you.
Thank you. And then if we could get Susan Lynn next. Thank you.
My name is Jerry Nolte. I'm the presiding commissioner of Clay County. I represent roughly 130,000 Kansas City citizens. There are a lot of things that I see here that I have a great deal of apprehension about, and I'm not going to enumerate those right now, but I will kind of focus on one thing, and that is the haste that's being exercised. Trying to put this thing together and put it before a essentially lame duck city council, if I understand the situation correctly, is not the way I think we are best served as citizens. We just had an election in Clay County. We had 4 out of 7 commissioners who were new people because of the expansion. One of the things that I made sure of was any substantive decisions that we could possibly delay until we had the new commissioners seated, I delayed, because it seemed to me that they were the ones who had stood election the most recently and therefore had the best view of what it was their people wanted. So a lot of us remember the redistricting. Please don't make this another replay of that redistricting. There are a lot of people who are still very angry over the way that came out. Let's not make the charter a replay of that particular process. Thank you.
Good evening.
Oh, sorry, real quick. If we can get Rob and Connie Dodson as the next speakers. Pass? Okay. Thank you. So then Andrea Smith and Wasim Ka.
Good evening. My name is Edward Ford. I've run for city council 5 times, successfully 4 times. I ran at large, and in none of my elections were there more than 2 candidates. So you think I would be in favor of the general election to function as a runoff. But let me tell you why I think that would be a serious mistake. The process is important. So if you're elected after the primary, there's no reason for you to continue to campaign, to fill out questionnaires, to knock on doors, to meet with the voters, to go to forums, to go to debates, because the election's over. And then when people come to vote in the general, they have no clue who their council person is. And as much as we would like to increase the voter turnout in the primary, there's just something inherent in a primary that people, for whatever reason, think that if I vote in the primary, I have to say if I'm a Democrat or a Republican. And we know that's not true in city elections, but still people have that mindset. And there's people who just won't vote in primaries, that will vote in the general election. I think you would really kill voter turnout in the general election if there was just 2 or 3 people to vote on. Using the Clay County Constitution as an example, when I went to the poll on the general election, I was shocked there were only 2 or 3 people I was voting on. One of the quirks in Clay County is if you're unopposed, your name doesn't even appear on the primary ballot. So we would have an important position like the prosecuting attorney that's never actually run for office who was elected under the charter. So campaigns have consequences. I think I became a better council person because I had a run in the general election. I had a, oh rats, okay. Well, to respect everyone's time, I'll leave it at that. But again, I would say don't rush the project. Think of the unintended consequences, but foreseeable consequences in all these different changes. Thank you.
Thank you. And then if we could get, I believe it's Steve Mann on deck.
Good evening. My name is Susan Lynn. I'm a resident of Kansas City and a volunteer with Better Ballot Kansas City. I personally spent hours and hours at parades, festivals, art fairs, and other public events to educate people on ranked choice voting. When I explained how it would work, that it's more democratic, it will save time and money, and that it leads to less politically polarized and more civil elections, people were really excited about it. This is not a partisan issue. The Kansas City Council and mayoral races are nonpartisan, and using ranked choice voting will help them continue to be so. When this initiative began, Better Ballot Kansas City was told by the city council they needed to show the council there was support for ranked choice voting in Kansas City. The city law department said that we needed to collect 3,480 signatures, and the charter amendment and ordinance required the same number. We collected 4,440 signatures, of which 3,623 were approved as valid. After we turned them in, we were told, sorry, law department made a mistake, and we really needed to turn in 33,000 signatures, according to the Missouri Constitution. Our group may not be huge, but the support for this ballot initiative is huge. We urge the Charter Review Commission to recommend to the City Council to put ranked choice voting on the ballot. The majority of people I talked to were in favor of ranked choice voting once they gave me a moment to explain how it would work. The negative comments all boiled down to this: we've always done it this way, and that's good enough. But is it good enough when our last primary we had 14% voter turnout? People don't bother to vote in primaries for many reasons, but one big reason is that they don't think their vote matters. Data from other cities shows that ranked choice voting gives greater voter turnout. When more people vote, this leads to a more democratic result and better reflects the level of support by the voters. For those officials concerned with making such a big change, we need only to look at cities like Minneapolis for solid examples of successful implementation of ranked choice voting. But first, we need to get it on the ballot in Kansas City again. We asked for the Charter Review Commission to recommend the ranked choice voting be put on the ballot. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark McHenry, if you want to make your way.
Good evening. My name is Wasim Khan. This is going to be the first I'm going to yield my time to Andrea because I hate being on the clock. And really, I'm very passionate about what she's going to read on my behalf. Thank you.
I don't know why I brought him with me. I'm going to go ahead and I apologize. I ran out of print time. People will have to share. But what we're here specifically to address is the governance of Kansas City's Parks and Recs and the board. And I will apologize again because I'm going to read this because we are on the clock. My name is Andrea Smith. I'm the alternate commissioner for Kenya on the Ethnic Enrichment Commission, where I also serve as the director of outreach. In this capacity, I continually meet with community members, educators, corporate officers, and government employees. I would like to let you know how important the Kcmo Parks Department is to the almost 50-year growth and success of the Ethnic Enrichment Commission. I was going to name this Kansas City on the global stage. I could also call this Supporting Kansas City's Diverse Communities, or How to Build a Welcoming Community, or even How to Prepare KC for a Continued Positive Reputation on the global stage. We have just come off an extremely successful NFL draft that was watched around the globe. Kansas City looked beautiful. We are preparing for the 2026 World Cup, the largest sporting event in the world, with games here. At last year's KC World Refugee Day celebration, Mayor Quentin Lucas mentioned the recent announcement that KC would host World Cup games. He stated the city needs its diverse communities to help get ready to host the world. One least understood treasure of our city is the Ethnic Enrichment Commission. To give you a brief background of the EEC, it began in 1976, American Bicentennial. Mayor Charles Wheeler from the Ethnic Heritage Committee to plan a parade and have local restaurants offer ethnic menus to show the diversity that built Kansas City. This committee compiled a written history of the contributions made to Kansas City's growth by various ethnic groups. This report won national recognition from the U.S. Bicentennial Association. The committee continued to meet and form the Ethnic Enrichment Commission. This was when the first Ethnic Enrichment Festival was held at Liberty Memorial. Because of the positivity of the festival, Mayor Richard Berkeley introduced a resolution in 1980 creating the Mayor's Ethnic Enrichment Commission. This year will be the 44th annual Ethnic Enrichment Festival. The commission now has representation of over 65 countries. Does that include his time too?
No, that's yours, not mine. Go ahead.
Okay, yay. I'm not all the way through. As I was saying, this year will be the 44th annual Ethnic Enrichment Festival, and I hope everybody here has attended the festival. Okay, a few nods. The Commission now has representation of over 65 countries. Each of these 65 countries represents a community organization within Kansas City. So internally, the Ethnic Enrichment Commission represents probably over 100,000 people within Kansas City.
Okay, stop. He wants to put my time in now. I yield my time to her, so you need to restart the clock.
I'll just finish.
The chair will...
Yeah, so for future reference, just to be respectful of everyone's time, let's do 2 minutes per speaker card, just to clarify. So if you could close in 30 seconds, that'd be great. Thank you.
Well, then let me just summarize. All of what we do would not be possible without the support of Kansas City, Missouri Parks and Rec Department. And I know that the governance and structure with the Parks Board is what helps make our Parks and Rec Department strong and allows them to be able to use their skills, their expertise in the field of Parks and Recs in order to enhance what goes on within the community and not just with the Ethnic Enrichment Commission. I've had 2 conversations with them the last couple of months. One was with a director of another Parks and Rec in the metro area. she told me that she holds the Kansas City, Missouri Parks and Rec Department as the gold standard of how a Parks and Rec department should be.
Perfect. Thank you so much. We really appreciate your time. Thank you. Okay. So next, Michael Herron, you can go ahead.
Commissioners, my name is Steve Mann. I'm in the 2nd District, and I appreciate this opportunity to speak on the charter review. And I was reading through the preamble to the charter, which I consider to be the city's mission statement. And I was heartened to see that the city's ideals include the vision of our great city as a community recognizing the contributions of all towards the city's viability, and to advance access to healthcare, quality education, and economic prosperity for all. I would add to this statement in the preamble to acknowledge that we have a well-housed, fed, and organized city as vital to our future. Now it's time for a thorough review of the charter, not just some tinkering around the edges. This should not be a rush job, but a careful examination with an eye to prepare for the future that is coming. There needs to be as many more opportunities for this type of engagement, and I don't think that's going to happen if we have a target of May 16th. Some of the areas that we could consider with a wider timeline are lowering campaign contribution limits. We saw in the 2019 primary, millions of dollars flowed into the mayor's primary, and I don't think that's good for democracy, and those without deep pockets or rich friends are priced out of public service. I would consider lowering the mayor's from $3,225 to $1,000, at large from $2,775 to $700, and then the in district from $1,675 to $400. I think we need a public finance campaign option, something similar to Denver's Fair Election Fund. Now, my rationale for including these changes in the charter is to make sure that people vote on anytime these are changed. And I don't think that politicians will, voluntarily do this. And the charter forum is a great place to engage this. So we need to examine alternate voting methods like RCV, and I think that we need to protect residents' digital privacy through changing the franchise and permits section of the charter. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Ann Garney.
Thank you very much, and thank you as a commission, the time you're taking this evening and your other meetings. I know that's all volunteer time, and I know the city does appreciate that. I'm here this evening representing the City of Fountains Foundation. I'm current chair of the foundation. The foundation has a 50-year history working with the park board, and the foundation's mission is to maintain, promote, and operate fountains in Kansas City, Missouri, and a big part of that is raising funds. The City of Fountains Foundation has been successful in doing that in partnership with the Park Board. City of Fountains Foundation is a volunteer organization. Of course, the Park Board are also volunteers. So hand in hand, they've gone out and raised significant amounts of money, actually $3.5 million a few years ago, to restore several fountains, and that'll continue to be their mission, to take care of the City of Fountains, as of course we all know we're the City of Fountains. And the Park Board is a volunteer group as well. They have the connections in the community. They know how to raise money. They know how to talk to individuals in the corporate world, the philanthropic world, and those connections are critical so they can work together. And then when those funds come in, they can either go in the park fund, where they stay in the park fund, and don't go into the general fund. They stay, which they then donor advised, give money for a particular fountain, goes to a particular fountain. So it's critical that money stays with the park system through the board, and they're again in partnership with the City of Fountains Foundation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so David Mecklenburg.
Good evening. My name is Michael Herron. I'm a retired employee of Parks and Recreation. Worked under 5 mayors and as many boards during my tenure with the department. And I want to remind you that this administrative board extends back 130 years, back to 1893, when George Kessler first proposed to that initial board the master plan for the park and boulevard system, which we enjoy today. We are the envy of not just the nation, but the world for our system, because we have one of the most best implemented park and boulevard plans in the world. And that's because we have an administrative board. And it was designed that way on purpose. If it wasn't for the Board of Parks and Recreation Commissioners, we wouldn't have the system that was built in the early 1900s, nor would it have been maintained, nor expanded as it has been into the growth parts of the city, particularly in the last 60 years. So I urge you all to consider the legacy that we have, and I'd like to see that preserved. It's worked very well for a long time. Why change something that ain't broke? Thank you.
Okay, Anita Gorman. Yeah, that's perfect, yeah.
Hi, my name is Ann Garney, and I served on the park board from 1992 to 1999, appointed by Mayor Cleaver. All the park board members are appointed by the mayor and can be changed at their pleasure. I'm here to speak in support of and in favor of our current park system. I think it's helpful to understand this 125-year history, the legacy that the park board has done for the city, that how important it is for the protection and the growth of our park system, and how it benefits our Kansas City citizens. The board ensures the continuity of the vision of previous park boards, the history, and we're overseeing 10,000 plus acres of parks and 125, 130 plus miles of parkways and boulevards. And as you heard, we're supporting the park board supports many community groups like the Ethnic Enrichment Commission, like the City of Fountains, and many other organizations. And so thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Alan Dillingham.
Good evening. My name is Dave Mecklenburg. I'm a former Parks Board Commissioner. I served for 8 years under Mayor James and 2 years under the current mayor. Basically, the thing we've got to remember is that this city was developed as a city within a park under the Kessler Plan. That is something that we have held dear to us and exemplified and held closely for 130 plus years. We have been known as the heart of America for the people in this city. We have been known as the city of fountains, only rivaled by Rome as a city with fountains. We have been known as Paris of the Plains, with boulevards and parkways, only second to Paris. Those are things that need to be protected, and we are dedicated as board members and former board members to maintain and to keep. We are a non-politicized board. We take the oath of the board to serve the citizens of Kansas City, Missouri. Not the council, not the mayor, not the city manager, but the citizens. That's our first charge. No matter what area of the city we come from, when we take that oath, we become commissioners for the citizens of Kansas City, Missouri. And you can see how well that has worked for 130 years. If it isn't broken, don't fix it. The only problems we have with the mayor and council and city manager is eroding our dedicated parks sales tax funds to do the job for the citizens of Kansas City, Missouri. If you want to change the charter, strengthen the ability or the inability of the political mechanism of the city to interfere with our dedicated parks funds by management fees, by all other things. When we got our park sales tax, which was approved by over 60% across the city, we gave up alternate small taxes as a commitment to the citizens that we would take care of that properly. Please, if you change the charter, protect our funds. Thank you.
Yeah, so Ms. Gorman will go next, and then Lucas Rodriguez.
Yeah, you're right now. Yeah.
Shortly after Emmanuel Cleaver became mayor, I was sent to the National Recreation and Parks Association convention, where we were to decide where the next convention would be. The ultimate people that were there to get it were from Boston, Atlanta, Denver, and San Francisco. Those all wanted the convention, but so did we. And so each one of those other city representatives spoke about how great their cities were. When they came to me, I said, why don't you staff go and see who's got the best parks? That was in 1991. In 1992, the NRPA convention was in Kansas City. And since that time, which was now over 30 years ago, the parks are even better. I was reared on something that said, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Thank you.
Thank you. Brian Holaby.
Hello, my name is Lucas Rodriguez. I'm a resident of the 3rd District. I wanted to voice support for something that the commission had talked about, which is the 50% plus one. You don't need to go to the general election. It's pointless. I'm in agreement with that. I also would like to briefly talk about, I don't want to get into the legality of this. I like to be more creative with it, but I think 16-year-olds should be able to vote in municipal elections. It's something that directly impacts them, and they're impacted by housing, public safety, transportation, any city policy. 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds are affected the same way. And so I think that they should be able to, at the very least, be able to vote in their school board elections. And lastly, I just wanted to say that the whole process for the charter review, it seems really rushed. And so I would encourage the commission to look into how to be more democratic. And I think the first thing you could do is extend your timeline and be a lot more intentional with public engagement so that we can hear from all sorts of people. That's all.
Thank you. So then, Jazz Hayes. Hopefully I said that right.
Good evening. My name is Alan Dillingham. Most of everything that I wanted to say that I've made notes on have already been said about the Parks Board, but still wanted to get up here and just mention that I think it would be a huge mistake to change anything. I'm here as a former Parks Board member under Mayor James, also the current board chair of the Kansas Museum, and the only reason that the museum is open is because of the Parks Board. So you have a beautiful new Corinthian Hall and Museum because the Parks Board and the dedication and the money that they put towards it. Dave Mecklenburg mentioned earlier about our park sales tax. This was a dedicated sales tax for our park system that was because of the Parks Board, again, pushing for that. Many meetings and out in the community to get that thing done. And then we got rid of a couple other assessments in the city because of that. So, you know, many things in this city that we're known for, from the City of Fountains, from the City Beautiful movement, all of that is because of a history over a century of parks. And we just ask you not to change anything there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Brian Hullaby. I'm a resident of 3rd District and a concerned citizen. First, actually, I agree with Lucas about lowering the voting age for municipal elections. One, because there's always a huge gap between the previous generation and the next generation. And I think including more people from the next generation gives them more control and more say over their lives. so that we don't make all those decisions for them. I think including them in the municipal process will, I think over time, increase turnout for elections. The other thing I want to talk about is democracy, I guess. One of the things you guys mentioned for the goal of this charter process was to safeguard democracy. And I'm not sure how you can do that in a couple weeks. To safeguard democracy, it requires engagement, sometimes lengthy, sometimes sloppy, sometimes hard, but it should be sloppy and hard. It's democracy, and that's how it's supposed to work. And so when we don't have time to involve as many people that need to be involved, that's a big problem because the decisions you make will largely impact a lot of people who might not be in this room. And so I'd like to see more engagement from people in communities that often get overlooked, particularly communities in the 3rd and 5th district. So I'd encourage you guys to reach out to them also and get their input. And that's it. Thank you for your time, and I hope you guys have a good night.
Thank you. And then if we could get Nathan Willett and Tom Brown.
Hi, my name's Jazz. I live here in the Northland. In fact, my wife had the car today, so I walked here using the new sidewalks on Choteau. But I came here to talk about two things. The first of which has already been talked about by a number of people, which is the timeline here. I don't think that this commission can come to a quality conclusion in the limited timeline you have. From what I understand, the timeline in 2013 was much longer than this one. Also, the communication about this process seems to have been pretty lacking. My understanding is that there was a social media post 6 hours ago about this, and all the people here are like the most deeply engaged people, and we should be including a lot more than that. We should be bringing more people into the process. And I've got a lot of opinions about the charter amendment proposals and things like that, but I want to stress one in particular that's been floated that I'm really concerned about, and that's the petition process for initiatives, referendums, and recalls. My understanding is that the proposal being considered is changing from calculating the number based off of total votes for the last mayoral election to registered voters. Well, the thing is if you look at the numbers of what that looks like in effect, is it's multiplying it by 6-fold, okay? That's a lot. Like, there's barely ever petitions completed successfully now under the current numbers, and increasing it 6-fold essentially eliminates the process entirely. Like, this commission might as well just propose that it's eliminated entirely. I think it's very undemocratic to raise that by that much. Further, if you think about the fact that how this number is calculated, the proposal, for example, for the recall would be 20% of registered voters. Now, there's another percentage of registered voters that we often talk about, and that's turnout. Well, the turnout for the last mayoral election was 14%. So you're asking more signatures to recall a politician than was cast for that politician, often double that. So I think the proposal here for changing the petition process is a really bad idea. I understand wanting to stabilize that number, but increasing it 6-fold is a really bad solution.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments. Let's see. This one, Delmira. Oh, I'm going to just leave it at Delmira, and hopefully that means Delmira.
All right, Nathan Willett, current District 2 resident, going to be District 1. I want to echo what I've heard tonight about the process being rushed. Even though I feel like it's being rushed, the quality of the commission isn't being compromised because Adam Miller is on it. I also want to echo what Ed Ford said. Even though as a candidate who won 68% of the April primary, I think the process is good. Entering into the second part of the process, it does bring about a different kind of look from constituents and other groups that I think is important to keep. In respect to ranked choice voting, I do support if it was more like 2 choices or 3 choices, but we have 8 people we're voting on. It's too confusing. As someone who's knocked the doors, who people don't know necessarily who's running against who, it sounds great in theory, but in practice, with 8 choices, we can't do it in Kansas City. The fourth thing, ballot order, I have a perspective on that. I'd like to email you because it'd be too confusing to talk about it right now. And then finally, the fifth thing, I thought we were running for a 4-year term, not a 5.5-year term. I did not understand that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And then Mike Kellum. Let's see. Is Tom Brown? Okay, perfect. Yeah, go ahead, Tom. Yep, stage is yours. Sorry? Oh, okay, perfect. Yes, go ahead.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Delmita Corliss Kamehameha. I was a judge for 20 years. I started as a pipsqueak, and that was about 20 years old. And so I was very excited because when I started, I wanted to see democracy in action. And I met a lot of extraordinary people who ran for city council. I think I ran with everybody, and everybody got elected but me. But it was an experience, and I want to say to you, the people's right to know shall not be denied. When you rush anything, you are saying to the people that they don't have a right to participate. And they are very concerned about that, and so am I. So I'm asking you to reconsider. There are things that I've seen for 20 years that need to be changed. How the absentee ballot for seniors are collected, that's one. Number two, I am concerned about how you're going to ask citizens to increase the number of registered voters that can petition to remove a council member when they are not abiding by the citizens. So that in itself is wrong. And I'm hoping that you will also look at, if you're going to change anything, as to how people are concerned about, well, my thought came up, but what I want to say is this. I think it's wrong that citizens cannot participate and watch the count when the votes are counted. I think that's wrong. And I think that you're saying once again that citizens who cannot participate in democracy, and that's wrong. So I'm asking you to reconsider, and please take your time. You can't rush things. If you rush things, it means you don't get them right. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Tom Brown. I'm actually a former charter board commissioner under Kay Barnes. I was Clay County commissioner, and I was also, and currently am a Clay County election board commissioner. And I was going to get up and talk about parks, but I don't know if you realize it, but you've received a PhD in parks administration in relationship with the city of Kansas City already tonight. I mean, you've had Anita Gorman, Alan Denlingham, Alan Garney, Dave Mecklenburg, and the doctor of it all, and I don't even see him now, Mark McHenry. There you are. You better, I would ask that you pay attention to what they say and do what they say, because they are right. And the other thing I wanted to talk about was the election dates, which is not that important a thing. But if you move the election dates to August and November in an off-year election, you're going to have far, far less voters than what you currently have, because if you look historically, there are rarely elections in August and November in an off-year election. Sure, it's on the state's calendars that you can have an election in those days, but it's rare that anybody does. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mike Kellum. Thanks again for being here tonight. I know the commitment that you all have taken onto your shoulders with this process. I served on the redistricting committee this past year, and there's some other folks in the room that were on that committee as well, so I know the time commitment that's involved in that. And I do just want to speak to the speed in which this process is being undertaken. It brings great concern to me. We, on the Redistricting Commission, had about 3 months to perform that task, which I thought was too little time for such a process as that. Ours was held up because of census data and other things that we had no control over. I don't see that with this initiative. This is a process that affects the next 10 years of the Constitution of the city. I think it deserves more than a few weeks. It should be several months rather than that. Shorter time frame. So I do think that there are things that need to be vetted throughout that. You have a lot of serious issues that you're looking into. More of this needs to be taken as well as far as public comment. And then time for our city council members to be able to deliberate and also review and understand the process. The election boards, I understand, have also been involved. There are fiduciary responsibilities that have not completely been vetted yet or looked into, and I don't know how you do that in a few weeks. There are, I think Mr. Ford alluded to it, there are unintended consequences that we want to make sure that we alleviate as much as possible and really understand and research these issues. I want to reiterate the comments regarding parks, and I would agree with Mr. Brown in his statement. You do have some of the foundational members of the Parks Board that have been here tonight and offered their thoughts and experience, and I too would support no change to that. I think that there are things tied to ranked choice voting that quite frankly haven't been vetted nationally. I believe it's only in a handful of cities that are even nominally the size that we are. Most of them are larger. I think that requires some further understanding and research for us to be able to understand how that will affect Kansas City as a whole in our election practices. I think that was it. If I think of something else, I'll reach out to you individually, but I do appreciate your time. I appreciate your service to the city, and I look forward to seeing how the process carries out. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so at this time, we've made it through all of our in-person speaker cards. So if we want to move over to Zoom, Howard, do we have any folks joining us on Zoom that would like to speak?
No one appears on Zoom with the raised hand.
Okay, so no one is appearing on Zoom with a raised hand. Going once. Going twice. Okay. Yeah. Very well. So we'll give that a moment. There is still, I think, a bit of time. If you had hoped to have an opportunity to speak and would like to fill out a speaker card, that's fine. But in the meantime, I wanted to open it up to fellow commissioners for any questions, any comments that you would like to make.
You know, Wilson and I kind of had the same technique when we were taking notes on your remarks. We sort of teased down the prevailing themes topically that we were going to discuss, and then we took notes on those, and we also put little check marks each time it came up. And your count looks like equal to mine. I would say the one that came up the most was the timeline. The pace seems a bit hasty. I can tell you from my long nights of reading the charter, it is a lot. It is an undertaking. And we're mindful of that. That is something that was brought up amongst ourselves pretty quickly. So we don't want you to feel as if we did not pay attention to that or consider that. And that's why we're having these conversations here now, is to get a pulse for the community about how you feel about that. If this is how you feel, and you feel there needs to be more time taken, I think that should be taken into consideration in our process as well. So I just wanted to note that that was not an oversight on our part. It was something that we came in knowing might be brought up, and the volume in which it was brought up is something that is not to be ignored. So thank you.
Other comments, other questions?
Just basically, I think most of us are in agreement how important community input is. I don't take nothing lightly when it comes to our community. I don't care what district you're in, but it's important and to let you know we are listening. That's the main thing I want you to know. We are listening, and how important it is for us to push forward and pay attention and listen to what you're saying, because we do not want to rush through this process, because this is something we're looking at 10 more years. And so if we do that, it would be an injustice to you, and let you know we are listening.
Nothing? I knew you had some.
Hi. Yeah, I would second the stuff about the timeline. It's something that we've discussed quite a bit in our last few commission meetings, how we feel like this is a really important document. It should not be rushed. There's a lot of unintended consequences that could come up. Even, we've looked at these at first glance and they seemed pretty reasonable. And then when you look into it some more, you're like, oh, okay, well, that could affect this, and then there's that. And, it does deserve more time. And we heard you loud and clear about that. And I'm excited for tomorrow's meeting to discuss it more as a full commission.
Yeah, thank you. So I think just in close, if no one else on the commission has any comments, I just want to reiterate really what Linda said, which is that we want to say thank you for your time. We want to say thank you for your voice. We are people with full-time jobs. We are volunteering here and either have great luck or are very unlucky to have this undertaking here in front of us. And so we are just thankful for the opportunity to hear from you all as we try to make these decisions. We ultimately want what's best for our city. We want the city to flourish. We want Kansas Cityans to flourish. And so we say thank you for your input. Logistically, if you would like to join us either in person or on Zoom, I did want to call out some of the upcoming dates that we have. So tomorrow, May the 2nd, we will be meeting for a regular commission meeting at 5 p.m. in City Hall on the 10th floor. Next Monday, May the 8th, we will have another one of these public listening sessions. That will be at the Southeast Community Center, which is located on 63rd Street. And then May the 9th, so a week from tomorrow, we will have another 5 p.m. commission meeting in City Hall. And then Monday, May the 15th, we have another commission meeting at 5 p.m. City Hall, 10th floor. The rest of the schedule is still to be determined, but we would love for you to join us either in person or on the publicly available Zoom sites. Once again, if you need any more information about the charter, you can visit kcmo.gov/charter. So,
I would like to get a picture of the commission before you leave, but also will there be additional public meetings scheduled after the commission has put forth its recommendations? I mean, making
good
comment
question.
before we know what's going to be presented is kind of tough.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So that's one of the agenda items for tomorrow, actually, is we have an agenda item to slate future scheduled meetings, and specifically how we want to continue to engage public comment and have public listening sessions, whether before or after. So
You're certainly welcome to come back here.
thank you so much, and thank you again for having us.
I'd like to.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you.